Good afternoon, family and friends. I want to welcome you to this special edition of our Leadership Blueprint podcast. My name, of course, as you know, is Dr. Olusegun Osineye, and I have with me here on this platform my very good friend, Kunle Banwo. We're going to be doing justice together to the topic that we have um, as our subject of discussion today, which is citizenship and the birth of nationhood. I was just sharing with my friend shortly before we came online that this is one topic that I believe is very foundational to how the mindset of the citizen works. And I also believe that once we can understand and apply this topic to our different situations and circumstances, I believe it will help us in the long run in how we shape ourselves as a nation and how we move, how we progress as a nation. Uh, it will help us in the involvement of our society as we continue to build on what our forefathers have done in the past. I don't have any doubt that this is going to be one of the podcasts that you will live to remember. Uh, and I hope that we can be able to shed light to what your role is as a citizen, what you're expected to do as a citizen, what the government is expected to do for you as a citizen, and what your responsibility is to the government, and how that interchange, how it's supposed to help us to build a nation that we will all be proud of. Maybe I don't know. Do you have anything to say just before we go into the conversation?
Thanks, my friend. Obviously, as my friend has introduced me, my name is Kunle Banwo, and it is indeed a special privilege and opportunity to look at this very crucial subject, as you alluded to. I believe it's fundamental to how we see ourselves and how we make vital contributions and impact in our countries and communities. So it is indeed an appropriate discussion that we ought to be having.
So, to get started, I want to ask you, I know, uh, with one of the things we've said is that we don't want to be using the word expert uh, to designate ourselves, but I know you are very much schooled in this area. So I just want to ask you, what is citizenship and who is a citizen?
Thank you, my friend. Thank you, as you know, and I'm sure you also are equally. We are both students of this subject.
Yeah.
Because it's that important. I want to approach this in two ways. First, you know, from a dictionary or even everyday definition as we know it in our societies. To me, citizenship is the constitutional right
Mm,
and the privileges bestowed on an individual which guarantees the legal status
mm,
of that individual.
mm,
And that status, those privileges, those rights are protected by the laws of a country. You can say that is a typical constitutional definition of what citizenship is. Um, I can even go on to say that citizenship is the conferring of a nation on an individual. It means that we say we put the nation on you.
mm,
It is giving a nation to an
mm.
individual.
You embodied the nation.
Exactly.
Mm,
It is quite unlike when you are part of a club
mm.
or
I
a
remember.
social gathering as a member.
Mm.
You are never a member of a country.
It's more than being a member.
No, no. Membership is based on emotional affiliation,
Mm.
is based on some kind of maybe cultural affiliation, maybe some other um, affiliation of privilege that 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 allows you to be part of a group, in which case you're a member. In fact, even when you talk about families, you are a member of a family, and that's because there is blood linkage, there is also emotional linkage, and those other things. But when you talk about a nation, you are not a member of a nation. The highest privilege an individual can have in a nation is citizenship. Because when somebody is called a citizen or has citizenship of a country, what you are saying is, we put this nation on you. We are saying that we confer the rights and the privileges that accrue to this land and to this nation to you. And those rights and privileges are guaranteed by the government. The constitution of the land protects it. We say that this is not an emotional conference, it's not an emotional award, it is a legal matter, and it is political. And those two words are very important: political, legal. Now, you can even argue that the economic is also inferred there. But the economics of a nation is more or less down to maybe your investment, or how the mechanism for the distribution of the resources of the nation. But whether you have more or less doesn't really matter. Two things are very important when it comes to citizenship: it is the political angle to it and the legal one. Because because a citizen is a legal entity as much as he is a political entity. It's not like, oh, if I like to, you can't say, I'm not even interested in the polity or the land. That means you don't understand what the word citizen or citizenship means. The word citizenship, my friend, comes from the word politis in Greece, which, by if you start to break it down, actually is the word that eventually translates to politics.
Mm.
So the citizen is a political entity as well as a legal entity, because the entity is backed up
Mm.
and guaranteed by law.
Mm.
So that, I think that's just a way to start, and I'll let you maybe say a few more words on that subject.
Yeah, thank you very much. From your definition, I could clearly hear that citizenship is when a citizen has a legal status to become, even though we don't want to use the word member, but just for the sake of making our people to understand what we are trying to say, is a legal status that is bestowed on whoever wants to become the citizen of a particular country to become a member of that particular country. That word legal status is very, very important, because if some people can go into another country as an illegal entity in that country. That's why you have in countries, well, I believe in all over the world, we have people who are undocumented in each country. But maybe they might not be so much pronounced as we have them in countries like United Kingdom or United States of America. When you come into a country through an illegal route, even though you are located in that country, that does not confer citizenship on you to be
Yeah,
part of that country.
yeah,
As far as that country is concerned, you are regarded as undocumented, because they cannot account for you as a member of that community. So that word legal status is very, very important. That is what gives you the right, the privilege, and it also spells out your responsibility, because I believe those three concepts are very, very important in understanding what citizenship or who a citizen is. A
Yeah.
citizen is somebody who has a right. You have a right to vote. You have a right to live. You have a right to your human dignity. And there are so many other rights that you have. You have a right to have access to public services like healthcare. You have a right to education. You have a right to vote and to be voted for. And you have a right to aspire to become anything without hindrance, as long as you proclaim your membership in that community.
Yeah.
And like I said, those three concepts are very, very important. You have a right, you have a privilege. There are certain things that the government just must uh, just must provide for you as a member of a country. And of course, it also leaves you with a responsibility. There are things that are expected of you when you become a citizen of a country.
100%.
I don't
I
know
mean,
if you have
I
more
just,
things to say.
no, I really, yeah, thank you. I really wanted to probably highlight some of those keywords because
Yeah,
I think it's so important.
yeah,
And our misunderstanding or downplaying on these keywords
yeah.
is the reason why our nations are the way they are.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter whether it is United States or United Kingdom or anywhere in Europe or on the mainland continent of Africa or any Asian, it doesn't really matter. The keywords are these: the constitutional
Right.
rights
Yeah. That is guaranteed.
and constitutional privileges, meaning that
Yeah,
the word constitution is
yeah,
important.
yeah.
It means that this is enshrined
It's
in,
fine. Yeah,
and these are bestowed on an
it is.
individual and they guarantee the legal status.
Exactly. And the government are bound to uphold those rights and privileges.
Yes, yes. And it means that these are these are rights that are backed up by the constitution of the land or
Mm,
by the laws of the country.
mm,
And they are independent
mm.
of any government in power at any given time.
Yeah,
And they are they do not violate your right as a human being, which is different. You see,
exactly.
the right to life
Yeah,
is universal,
it's universal.
but citizenship is not universal.
Yeah,
You absolutely have the right to live because you are a human on earth.
yeah,
But that does not mean you have citizenship of every nation
yeah.
or of a given nation.
That's true.
So there are some rights that has to be protected under the Human Right
Yeah,
Constitution, which is universal.
yeah,
It says this individual has a right to life.
mm,
That is God given. It is not a prerogative of any particular government. It must be protected in any country, regardless. But when it comes to citizenship, there's a reason why countries are so reluctant to give citizenship to people. And they make you go through a long process before it is conferred. There's a reason for it. Part of that we've already alluded to. But one key one is this: when a nation confers citizenship on an individual, what they are saying is this: that the government is responsible for you.
mm,
What they are saying is this: there is a contract between you and the government. What they are saying is this, that you, and you mentioned that earlier on, can now participate in the politics,
Hmm.
that is the governance,
Governance.
the governing function
Yeah.
of the nation. You have the right to participate in civic matters, to run the affairs of the nation
Hmm.
in any capacity,
Hmm.
regardless of your birth status, of your economic status, of your social status, or any other human right status. As long as you abide by what guarantees that legal status, which is the constitution or the laws of the country.
So, what I can hear you say, or what we have been saying together, is that there are certain function or functions performed by the government
Yes.
that are not they are when they are carried out by the government, they are not doing the citizens any favor.
No.
It's not a favor. And I think it is important for us to highlight that, because I have seen some people in government who are performing, even though they are not really doing what they are supposed to do, but at least they are making attempt to perform some of these functions that is enshrined in the constitution, that is binding on everybody. But when they perform this function, they always want the citizens to see it as if they are doing them a favor. But a citizen who understands his constitutional rights, who understands the concept of citizenship, should know or ought to know that when people in government performs this function in our community, they are not doing me favor. It is fulfilling their own aspects of what is binding us together as a nation. Because whether you like it or not, we are still going to go into that. When we say we want to come together as a nation, it has to be a collective desire of those who are citizens, who have agreed to become citizens. So a nation is not just something somebody decree into existence. You can't decree a nation into existence, even though that is what I can say is the experience of most of African countries, even though they got independent from their colonial masters. But you also know that over the years, there were so many military activities in the continent of Africa, such that you literally see many of these military officers just declaring certain things. For example, if we look at Nigeria, for example, the constitution that we have in Nigeria up to today is a product of military activity. We have not even really sat down as a democratic nation and say, this is what we want to guide us, to bind us, to shape our identity as a nation, now that we are now under democratic setting. We have not done that. And for as long as we continue to shy away from that, people's rights are still going to be trampled upon.
100%.
People's privilege are still going to be displayed before them as though they are being done a favor. So
You know,
I just want you to speak a little bit more on how, because we are speaking to the so-called citizen now. Of course, those in politics can also listen to it, but But what I feel that we are addressing is to help the ordinary citizen understand what their basic rights and, of course, what their responsibility is or are as a responsible citizen. So, can you throw more light on what uh, should be the rights and the privileges of the citizen, that when the government performs this function, then the citizen should not see them as though they are being done a favor?
Thank you, Shego. And these are very important questions, and I'm grateful that we are raising this. But let me quickly say this before I go into that question. You see, if the citizen is a legal entity
Mm,
that is guaranteed, whose existence is guaranteed by the Constitution,
mm,
what do we think is the most important um, I don't know why you say responsibility or the most important asset, yeah, of that citizen? I would answer my question by saying that it is the knowledge of the Constitution that is the most important asset a citizen can have. Meaning that if you want a citizen to function properly, he must, she must be educated in the Constitution that guarantees his legal status. Ignorance of constitutional rights and privilege is exactly the bane of the existence of a citizen. And by that, I would say that one of the most important responsibilities of a citizen is knowledge of law. You have to understand the constitution that actually guarantees your existence.
mm,
Otherwise, your ignorance becomes my power.
mm, mm,
I can bring you something that is always yours, then dangle it as a carrot in front of you and say, would you like to have this?
mm,
Like it?
mm,
Okay, you know what? You know what? Give me what you have in your right hand, and
mm,
I will give you what has always been yours. And
mm,
you say, oh, I love you. I like that thing so much.
mm,
Oh, please, can I have it?
mm,
And then you give up what you have to get what you already
mm,
own. My point here is that the citizen is not an emotional entity.
mm.
And isn't it true
And
that
we can effectively say that is a contractual agreement.
it,
It's
a
a
contract
contract.
is based on law?
Yeah, it's a contractual agreement.
If you and I have a business contract,
Yeah.
what do? We invite a lawyer and say, draft us a contract which we will both countersign and say, okay, here is my signature
Yeah.
on so and so date.
Yeah.
And you also append your signature. And even though we love ourselves, even though we are friends, oh, I like you, you like me,
Mm,
but we are not talking about an emotional investment.
mm,
We are not creating an emotional investment. We are creating a legal entity, which is called a business. A
mm,
business is a is a legal contract.
mm.
The
So,
same way,
Kunle, I think then when a nation or a country begin to exhibit certain qualities of disorderliness or dysfunctionality,
yeah,
I think it would be safe to say that it is because there is a break or there is a breach in the contracts that binds us together
most certainly,
as citizens of that country.
most certainly. And there can be many questions asked. Is it that they don't understand the contract?
Yeah?
Have they not read it? Do they not understand the roles?
Just want to jeopardize the contract,
Or
do
you just
their
want
own
to
thing.
go rogue and just tear the contract?
Yeah.
There has to be a reason. Either you don't understand the contract, you've not read it, you don't know your roles and your responsibility, which you're about to go into,
yeah.
or you know it, but you actually want to act as a rogue entity.
Mm. Or,
Either of them
or
is
it
not
could
good.
also be that maybe uh, the the citizen can also feel helpless if they think that those in leadership has also failed them. There can be a feeling of helplessness.
Exactly. That's the rogue entity we're talking about, where somebody has decided to violate that contract
Yeah,
and the other party now feels helpless and I think, you know what,
yeah,
I need to. You see, when contracts are violated,
yeah.
how are they normally addressed?
Mm.
You recourse to law.
To the
There has
law,
to be a
to the
legal
law. Yeah,
provision.
yeah,
Can you see that everything we are saying is all based on legal terms,
yeah,
legal all the way?
yeah,
In fact, when a country gives you a passport,
yeah.
do you know what they say?
Mm.
They will say this
The
passport
property of
is the
that
property
country. Yeah,
of that country. It is not
yeah,
your property.
yeah.
It is, we give you that as
That's
a way
why
to say
that's why a government can seize your passport, and
100%.
you don't have anything. You can't do anything against that because it's
In
their
fact,
property.
Shegun, in a country that functions well,
Yeah,
right from when an individual is born,
yeah,
the country says you belong to me.
yeah.
Yes, it's good that you are born to family A or
Or
B,
B.
but the country says you actually are my child. You belong to me. So what do? They issue a
But
certificate of
it's the birth
birth
certificate. Yeah,
to say you are born to this country, to a family of Mr. A and B,
exactly,
but don't forget, you belong to the country.
exactly.
Now, it is on that basis that the country can say, now we need some service to be done.
Mm.
And we call on you to,
For military service.
oh, yes. Now,
Like the NYSC, where every
NYSC,
graduate goes
all
to
the
Nigeria.
paramilitary services,
Yeah,
even military service,
yeah,
or even what they call a jury service when
yeah,
you do,
yeah, yeah,
and up to the point of finality, when somebody dies, what happens? The country says, okay, the land, my land is reclaiming this person, and they issue certificate of death, which means from cradle to grave,
yeah.
the country is saying, I own you.
I recognize you, and then I know that you have transited to another realm. And
Meanwhile, in between, if you choose to exercise certain emotional privilege, like I want to get married, the country will say, okay, okay, I recognize that. I issue you a certificate of marriage.
yeah,
If along the line you say, I want to start a business, you say, okay, you know what? I issue you a certificate of business incorporation.
yeah,
If along the line you say, I want to go to
acquire
school
property.
or acquire property, they'll say, I issue you a certificate of ownership, C of O.
Yeah,
If along the line you say, now I want to study secondary school, I issue you school living, meaning at
every
every
step.
point in
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
the country is asserting
yeah.
its
Authority.
authority based on constitutional
Vision.
provision
Yeah,
that you belong to me.
exactly.
But in exchange, you also can say, country, I agree,
My
but
right
I
needs
also
to
make
be
demands.
protected.
So, for example, if you travel to a country
Mm.
and suddenly war breaks down in that country,
Yeah,
your government
mm.
of the government of your country is obligated
It's
to come
obligated.
find you
Exactly.
and evacuate you out of
Evacuate you by everything possible.
by every means possible.
Yeah.
If you go to a nation and that nation violates your right,
Mm.
you can go to an embassy and say, country, my government, I have just been abused by this government. So it becomes a government to government matter. Why?
Exactly.
Citizenship. This is why we cannot joke with we can, this is not an emotional thing. The government is not doing it because they like you.
Yeah.
They're doing it because there's an obligation.
Yeah. There is. And
This
it's
is why now if a country is obligated to do this kind of things,
mm,
why do you think they would just hand out citizenship as if it's a Christmas gift? No, it is huge responsibility to be a citizen of a country because the government now says, I am responsible for you from cradle to grave. And I do not take that lightly. I have to be seen to be responsible to my responsibilities. You see, responsibility simply means these are my obligations, and I'm going to respond to it according as it is expected. These are things that sometimes we lose sight of. And so when you see a country or in any governance and they do certain things, like maybe they make the road, they repair the road, and they expect you to applaud them, it means something. Either the government does not understand its function, or the citizen have been so abused to the point that they don't even know what it is theirs by right and
mm.
privilege.
Now, what I can also deduce out of what you're saying is that when these rights and privileges as enshrined in the constitution or in the contractual agreement between the nation and the citizen, when these privileges and rights are upheld and the government shows response to fulfilling those obligations, then I think this is where the sense of pride, the sense
Exactly.
of dignity,
Belonging,
sense
dignity,
of belonging, this is where it comes from.
and it doesn't matter whether your country is a big one, a small one, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. I mean, there are countries that are in just hundreds of thousands.
yeah,
But because their government is fulfilling this obligation,
yeah.
you see them,
They
they
feel
put
dignified.
their face out. They go through what do you call it? National airports,
Yeah, with
national
pride.
with dignity.
Yeah,
They are very small. They're just maybe a few hundred thousands.
yeah,
But you see the pride. When they go to represent the country, either at a sporting event
yeah,
or any international event, you see the pride with which they go.
yeah.
The, you see the dignity because they know that their government backs them up.
Exactly. Now, thank you very much, Kunle. I think we also need to talk about so that it won't appear as if it's just a one-sided responsibility in the bargain. There is also what is expected of the citizen, which is their responsibility towards the state. I understand in some countries, mostly in African countries, the citizens are not always willing to fulfill this responsibility because they believe that their rights and their privileges have already been violated. So why should they show responsibility to the state? But in a proper country where these contractual agreements are upheld, there are responsibilities that
Yes.
are expected from a citizen. And like you said, these are not things that you do or you are expected to do based on emotion or based on excuses
Mm.
because it's a binding agreement. The government has to fulfill the side. Then when it comes to your own turn to fulfill your side, you are obliged to fulfill that responsibility.
Right.
Can you please speak to some of this responsibility that
No, thank you.
citizens has to fulfill to the government?
There are a number of these responsibilities, as you well know, but I want to touch on some of the fundamental ones
Yeah,
so that just in case we don't have time to go to everything. And I would say, and I mentioned before, to me, the most important of all the responsibility of a citizen is number one, knowledge of Constitution
yeah.
and the keeping of the Constitution.
It's a joint effort.
That is, I am obligated to keep the law.
Yeah.
This is so fundamental
Mm.
that what the Constitution requires of me,
Mm.
I am going to fulfill my end of the bargain.
Exactly.
And you can break that down to a whole lot of things, but I can just leave it at that, just keeping the law. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, the responsibility to partake in civil
Services.
services
Mm.
is an obligation.
Mm. It is. So we shouldn't be seeing them as if the government is bothering us, or
No,
maybe why should they be bringing out this kind of program? It is part of our responsibility.
it is a civil obligation.
Exactly.
Another one is the payment of tax.
Tax. Yeah.
Is an obligation.
Mm.
Why do you do that? Now, in an event, and I think we already qualified this,
Yeah.
where the contract is upheld,
Exactly. Yeah.
then you know that whenever your money, your tax
Mm.
goes into the nation,
Yeah.
anywhere,
Yeah.
it is going to be used
For
for
good, for the
to
good of the society.
of the society, the infrastructure,
Yeah.
and the other important priorities such as education,
Yeah.
such as defense,
Healthcare.
healthcare,
Yes.
such as
Mm.
the various services that
Energy
energy,
sector. Yeah.
the things that make the nation function.
Mm.
Because you know that I am a contributory entity in this whole
Building
bag.
this nation. Yeah.
I have a part to play,
Mm.
and I'm going to play that part.
Mm.
The other one, I mean, there are so many of these responsibilities, is the right to allow other citizens to also live in peace.
Mm.
It is an obligation. As much as you want to live in peace,
Yeah.
also obligated that you allow other nations to operate, to live in peace.
Mm. Thank you very much. Another dimension that I want us to go into in discussing uh, citizenship is also to talk about the social and the cultural dimension that
Mm,
it also entails. Now, let's take where Nigeria. So most of our examples will definitely come from Nigeria, or where we are currently living. Now, for example, in Nigeria, although there are agitation, we want to become Biafra, we want to become Oduduwa state, we want to become Arewa state, we want to become this and that.
mm,
No doubt there are those agitations.
mm,
And the reason why people are having such agitations is because they felt that the current contract that is binding us together as a nation has been unfair to some group of people.
mm,
Now, for me, I have tried to observe people. I have watched Igbos, I've watched Yorubas, I've watched Hausas, I've watched people from different ethnic groups. And one thing I can deduce is that in some aspect, and I'm sure people can relate with what I'm saying, in some aspect, we are all proud of being in Nigeria,
mm.
in some aspects.
True.
But in many other aspects, we are not happy of what Nigeria is doing to us as a citizen. Now, if we believe that we have some area of commonality that we can say this is our common heritage and common identity that we can call a national identity, then how can we then harmonize and harness that cultural and social dimension such that we're able to formulate a national identity for ourselves? Because that is also a critical aspect of forming a nation. The people have to agree and have to believe that this narrative about us reflects what we conceive ourselves to be as a nation. So
The
I
question
just
you're
want to
asking,
talk about that cultural and social dimension of citizenship.
I'm going to tee this up and then I'll bring you in to say some words on this. But let me tee it up. You know, when you play golf, you tee it
Yeah.
and then right. There are two models of nationalism, Shagun. And sometimes either we conflate these things or we just somehow are not quite sure which model to go for. And I think that's what that's is playing out in Nigeria in a very graphic way. But it's not just Nigeria. I can also see it play out in literally every nation as I look at them.
Yeah.
The two models, generally speaking, you can say there's civic nationalism and there's also ethnic nationalism. I will just talk about them very at a very high level, just because of our time. See, this both of this nationalism, whether it's civic or ethnic,
Mm,
they represent the basis for citizenship, identity, and belonging.
mm,
They are the ways by which we identify ourselves
mm,
and how we feel a sense of belonging in a nation.
mm,
Now, what is civic nationalism? Just very, very, very broadly speaking, it is when a nation defines itself through shared political values
mm,
and the allegiance to some
mm,
set of principles, governmental principles. Maybe you say, oh, we're a democracy,
mm,
and therefore we are bound together by that value.
mm,
Or so you can say, in this nation, we believe in the right of the individual and the right of own property.
mm.
You know that is just that has nothing to do with your ethnicity. It
Yeah.
just means, look, we strip away your backgrounds. We just look at certain ideas that will bind us together. We all say we will hold on to it together. In France, for example, they will say égalité, liberté, fraternité, meaning, you know, égalité meaning equal right, liberty or freedom, and then what's the other one?
But
Uh,
uh,
yeah, so fraternity meaning the principle of
brotherhood, the brotherhood.
brotherhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. In US, they will also say, you know what? We just one nation under God, where
Mm,
the right of every individual is to be upheld. Right? Meaning, we just say we don't really care where you come from.
yeah.
An ideal is going to bind us together. We all believe in democracy, and that is the commonality we have. And what happens in this under this kind of civic nationalism? They try to emphasize some kind of national inclusivity, something that brings everybody together,
Yeah.
that fosters that union
Mm,
that is different from your background
mm,
by culture
mm,
or
mm,
ethnicity,
mm,
those kind of things.
mm.
So, and the whole idea is we don't care where you come from.
Exactly. Mm,
Now, unfortunately, even though those are good things, you can take people away from a nation, but you cannot take culture away from them
mm,
because culture is in people.
mm.
So ultimately, if somebody comes from, say, of Italian heritage, Italian heritage is in their blood.
Exactly.
So when it suits, when things are going well, they will go with that shared values.
Yeah.
But when things go bad, what do you think they go back to?
They retreat back
Their
to
cultural
their
and,
cultural identity.
and those back. That is, you know what? When all things are lost, I'm left with my identity. so, so guess what's happening in Nigeria?
Mm,
We're trying to also promote this civic nationalism and say we're going to be one. It doesn't matter whether you're Igbo or Hausa. But if the contract at the middle is not working, what do you think people are going to do?
they will
They're
retreat
going
back.
to the other one, which I call ethnic nationalism,
Mm,
which is not based on inclusivity. It
mm,
says, no, I'm different. They will say, first, I'm Yoruba, so I want Yoruba nation. And
mm.
I will say, I'm Igbo, so I want
Biafra.
Biafra. And I will say, no, 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 no. I am. In fact, they will say, a Fulani is very from Hausa.
Oh,
So please let us both understand where we came from.
exactly.
Everybody will start to go back to is the same principle of to your tent, O Israel.
Mm,
In other words, and this was also what God wanted. He wanted the whole nation
yeah.
to be one. And indeed, they share the same father. They
That-
share the
that-
same. But when things went bad, what did they say?
They went
And
to their different
a
tribes.
father's name.
Yeah.
Exactly. He said, I'm Isaac. I am I am Judah. So your tent, O Israel. So what we are seeing is not new.
Mm,
It has always been like this in all of history.
mm,
Because when ethnic nationality is defined through shared ethnicity, shared culture, shared language, shared ancestry.
mm, mm,
And that is always there.
mm,
People can aspire to something of
mm,
a civic nature
mm,
if you have not threatened their very identity and they feel like, you know what, this thing is working for us. They will stay in that so-called civil pyramid. But if that breaks down,
mm.
resort to that other one. So, what is my point? If we want social cohesion, which we believe that, you know what, Nigeria is good. I think the idea of Nigeria is good. And at the end of the
But
day,
I can say we all believe that the idea of Nigeria is
of
good,
course,
but there are still
no,
some naughty area that we need to
you
straighten out.
I don't want to even say, just to prove that this is not a Nigerian issue alone.
Yeah,
Look at the United States right now.
yeah.
Because people feel like certain things are not, we're not satisfied with certain things. What are they not going? What are they not doing? No, me, I'm a Native American. I have to, me, I'm a European American.
Yeah,
I'm a Black American. Me, I'm,
African American,
what do you call it? Um,
Asian American,
and everybody begins to go in retreat
so
into their
that, mm,
ethnicity.
mm,
And what that does is it says the center is not holding very well.
yeah,
So, question: should we expunge one at the expense of other? No,
mm,
both are valid,
mm,
but there is something that brings people together, and these things go beyond ethnicity or even the ideal of the civil thing. It is interesting that if we look at this from the prism of God,
mm,
from the lens of God, he was saying things like, "Let me tell you something. There are two most important things in a nation: honor your God. Number two, love your neighbor as yourself."
mm,
He said every other law is built on this.
on this.
Every other aspiration is
Mm,
built on this too. In other words, a nation must have a source of reference,
yeah,
God.
mm,
Number two, you as a fellow citizen, you are as valuable as I am.
I,
And my value does not cancel your own value.
mm,
If those two are kept sacrosanct,
mm,
there will be social cohesion that we aspire to. Now, we can pretend as if we are the wisest civilization in the world, that we are the brightest. But so long as we are violating these two, our societies will not be in question.
thank you very much. So, in other words, what I can hear you saying is that as a nation, as a citizen, or as citizens belonging to a nation, we must all know that we have what we call a shared national value. We must
Yes,
have that sense of belonging,
yes,
that identity that we all have a commonality
yes.
in how we project ourselves as a nation.
And guess what,
Hopefully
Shego?
that, yeah,
These are the things that all of our emblems try to promote. So when you see the
exactly.
coat of arms,
Yeah,
when you see the flag, it's trying to
exactly.
say there is an idea, an ideal
Yeah,
that we should all hold on to that is beyond just where you come from.
yeah,
When we sing the national anthem,
yeah,
it doesn't belong to any particular tribe. You say, this is us.
yeah,
Those things are meant to bring us together.
yeah,
Our passports all look alike.
yeah.
Our driver's license all look alike. They are
exactly.
trying to say there is an ideal we should all aspire to. Let us rise
Yeah.
above the mundane and go to a better place because we are actually better than all of those local and private and tiny bit of interest. We can go to something a higher place.
And in addition to having a shared national value, I also think our history as a nation is also very, very important. We must
Absolutely.
not in any way try to bury, to isolate, or uh, to how do I put it now, to kind of dismantle our history so that so that we don't deface the original, authentic narrative of the
Yeah.
history. Is very, very important. Now,
Very
let
important.
me just say this example. For example, my daughter, my last daughter, she's just 7 years old. But as far back as when she was 5, she already knew who Martin Luther King was and how important it was to this nation. She already
Mm.
knew about that. And how did she know? Because she was taught, even at that tender age, she has been taught they value those national heroes, those who fought for the rights of other people. She already, she already knew those history. And so we must not joke with all this if we expect the citizens to embrace our values as a nation. And of course, not only our history as a nation, our our coming together as a community, we must cherish it, we must value it. And I believe these are some of the things that we need uh, that will bind us together as citizens in the nation. Now, before
Especially
we go to the next question, uh, before we go to how citizenship connects to the part of a nation or nationhood, I just want us to highlight some of the processes. I know there are some processes you will need to take to become a citizen, but there are some you are just born a citizen. There is no process about it.
that is the most natural process.
There are some that are just natural, but there are some that you have to go through certain process to become a citizen. So I just want us to talk about those ones. Then we go to the next question on how citizenship connects to the birth of nationhood.
And we said it. Say the most natural way to be a citizen of any country is by being born
Yeah, the bloodline.
into that country.
Yeah,
And if you ask me, that is what the vast majority of people of any country, that's what they have in common. That
yeah.
is, I was born into this nation.
This conflict.
You know that in scriptures, one time the apostle Paul was being cross-examined, and then and the cross-examination of Romans can be very stringent. So what they did was they had tied him up and they were examining him and they were beating him and saying, "Ha, you were a troublemaker, aren't you? What? Why are you doing that?"
Mm.
And with each of those questions is a strong whiplash. And maybe the man had just maybe has taken like two blows. Suddenly, suddenly his his brain cells woke up. I said, "Wait a minute, why am I being beaten like this?" He said, "You know, ask the man, is it lawful?
Mm.
Look at that word.
Very
Is
long.
it lawful to beat a Roman citizen?"
Like this. Wow.
Woo! This is why I say this is not about emotions.
Yeah.
Is it lawful to beat a Roman citizen?
Mm.
As soon as that soldier heard that, he dropped whip.
This
Now,
man will put
because
me in trouble.
the matter now has become something that Caesar himself must look into. Don't forget, Caesar is government.
Yeah,
It has become a governmental matter now
yeah,
because you are violating a citizen, and a citizen can recourse to law
yeah.
for redress. So now The centurion, the captain who was in charge of that, said, "Please, don't tell me you're a citizen." Paul said, "In fact, I am. I'm a citizen of a certain town called Tarsus. I
That's
was
what.
born there
The Cilicia.
in Cilicia. I was born there." Am I lighting the point
And the
there?
man told him, I
He
got
said,
this citizenship with a large sum of money.
I said,
Well,
I bought, exactly, I bought my own citizenship. Ah, and I told that story just to highlight those two processes.
yeah,
One, by being born a citizen.
yeah,
Second, by procuring it.
yeah,
Now, that procurement can be through there can be any step that has been defined, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, you paid for it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Somebody can say, I have a golden visa to a country. Well, you still paid for it.
yeah,
Or I'm an investor and therefore I
yeah.
was given this,
It's
you paid for it.
the process. There's still a process attached to it.
There'll be a process, of course. That process can be a country can say, we want people to come to this country, and therefore we're going to just a government can because ultimately conferment of citizenship is a governmental function. So they can create any process that they think is fit. But you have to the whole point is for you to buy or to procure citizenship, you have to demonstrate that you are going to keep the law of that land, that you accept the history of that land, that you commit to the progress, to the betterment of that land, that you respect the right of every other citizen, that you also accept the right and the privilege of participating in civic life. These are all important things. And sometimes that you are willing to renounce the citizenship that you once held. Meaning, it may mean that this may cost you any other citizenship that you already have. For example, if you're an Indian, if you have of Indian heritage, you cannot at the same time have United Kingdom citizenship. I don't know how it is in the US, but with some other countries, you can have dual citizenship, meaning you
Well,
you
I think US allows dual citizenship because there are Nigerians who
no, yeah, no, Nigeria has that, but I'm talking about between UK and India,
oh,
you have to choose one.
you have to choose one. Okay. Well, I don't
I
know.
don't know what is it between India and US.
I don't know.
But I think Nigeria has that with every country, meaning that, and why is that important? We still want you to pay tax in this country. I think people don't understand taxation.
Yeah.
You see, Solomon, you can
Maybe
own,
we need to talk a little bit about that because there is a new tax reform uh, that has just been put out there in Nigeria, and you can see the threats to life that is being accorded to the man who is at the forefront of it. That is Mr. Olusegun, is it Olusegun Taiwo now also?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
this man has done some very amazing work
Mm.
in reforming the taxation system in Nigeria. And because some people see what he has done as a threat to what they have been used to, they are kind of threatening him,
Antagonistic.
sending,
Yeah.
sending messages to him that so that the man is now being guided by
Yes. Well,
military police now.
now this is why this subject is very important.
Yeah,
Because if you see citizenship as an emotive matter,
yeah,
well, you don't understand it.
yeah. You have to pay tax. That's the way it is.
Doesn't matter what it is. It's a civic obligation to pay
I
your
have to
tax.
pay tax. I'm
Now you can
happy paying
debate.
tax in the US. I don't have to grumble about it.
Now, Solomon, I mean, Shegun, you can debate the fairness of the tax system.
Yeah,
You can debate it, and the utilization of that tax that once it is paid, you can debate all that. But to say I don't want to pay tax at all,
that's not telling you.
do you even realize that the concept of tithing is a taxation system.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Is God teaching us how to be responsible to those in authority? It's a way of showing us how to be responsible to those in authority.
Now, and that's why you see it is a way to say, I am a citizen, number one.
Kingdom
I am
citizen.
I'm responsible, number two,
Yeah.
and I am still alive. Because once you are dead, you cannot pay any tax anymore. So it is a way to say, I am still functioning. I am still productive in the nation. So these are things that need to be taught and understood. Otherwise, it's
And
going to
that's
be
why we are doing what we are doing now.
100%. Otherwise, it devolves into an emotive matter, which absolutely has no value. It just wastes everybody's time and energy.
So, in addition to acquiring citizenship through maybe making payment to own it, and of course, by having it through your bloodline, not necessarily bloodline alone.
By birth,
You can be born in a country like my daughter was born in US, and by virtue of that, she became a citizen automatically. But I was not a citizen at that time. So I don't have that bloodline that could have accorded that to her. But by virtue of being born in the country, she became a citizen. So it
it
can
can
be,
also be
it can,
conferred.
yeah, it can be conferred. It can be through parental connection. It could be by birth. It can also, in fact, it can also be as a result of uh, uh, as a result of marriage.
Oh yes,
Through marriage,
marriage,
you
yeah,
can,
those are all
marriage.
family related
Yeah,
pathways. So whether ancestry or family related. So if you look at the way citizens, you see various categories. They will say by birth or by ancestry or by family. So all that comes under the same heading. The other one is you go through a naturalization process. The other path, which another big category, is a government for maybe some things you have done that is just extraordinary. They confer the nation on you.
yeah, I think I've had Nigerian government conferred citizenship on some individuals, particularly was it during the time of Yaradua, or I think Buhari even did it too, or I think he did it too. They just conferred
Yes,
citizenship on certain individuals for whatever
exactly.
they've done for
Because and it must have been that you've demonstrated some kind of value that the nation says, oh, this is extraordinary. We really love this. And so the government confers it. They give you the more like they say they give the key to the nation.
So let's talk about how citizenship connects to uh, the birth of nationhood, because we cannot be talking about a nation without the collective efforts, agreements, and decision of the citizen. So how do we connect that to the birth of the nation?
Well, so we're saying citizenship and nationhood,
Yeah.
which is why I think I preempted this particular question by what I answered the other time, that the understanding of how nationhood comes about,
Mm.
the two models is very important, the civic and the ethnic
Mm.
aspect.
Yeah.
Either way, both are citizens. However, the model through which they coagulate to form a nation is very important.
Mm.
Let me because I spoke a little about the ethnic side of the civic side of things. From the ethnic side of things, you were saying that there's the cultural heritage that confers on me the uh, that defines my citizenship is what I'm promoting above everything else, or my ancestry, or a kind of homogeneity that we share with other groups is the reason why I am I see myself through that lens, and therefore the nation that is being formed is of that character, of that trait.
mm,
So, for example, you say that, if, assuming, I'm just assuming now, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, assuming the idea of Yoruba nationhood goes forward, you will see that it's going to be on the basis. In fact, let me put that aside.
mm,
Let's go back a few years ago, 1960s up to 1964, when there was Western region,
mm,
Eastern region, Northern region. So this was effectively three nations in one.
yeah,
And this concept is also what holds in United Kingdom. Do you know United Kingdom is actually a nation? It consists of four different nations.
mm.
There is England, there is Scotland, there is Wales, and there is Northern Ireland, which is people of Irish extradition. So, and each of them sees themselves as individual nations. If when they are playing European nations football, they
Play
all
separately.
they play separately. I think in Olympics, no, I think Olympic is Team GB,
Now,
but in some other
Great
sports,
Britain, they do Great Britain in Olympics.
everything Olympic, but in some others, in World Cup, they go as different nationalities
Yeah.
because indeed they are different nations based on this idea of the cultural heritage,
Mm,
the English,
mm,
the Scots,
mm,
the Welsh,
mm,
the Irish.
mm,
The same thing is also what happens in Nigeria, the Yorubas.
mm,
So they
mm.
say it is right to say Yoruba nation, even if it is not um, legally written, but it is still a nation because it defines a people by same culture, traditions, folklore, language, and that forms the identity of that people.
And Yoruba as a nation is so huge, such that you have it across West African countries, you have it in
Absolutely.
Cuba, you have it in Brazil,
Absolutely.
you have it in Haiti,
But the same thing is true
and culture.
for the Hausa and Fulani. The Fulani as a people, they exist almost everywhere. I mean, right to Ghana, to Gambia, to Mauritius, you see the Fulani nation. So, meaning that at some point, these people will have shared the same ancestor.
Yeah.
At some point back in history, it will have been one man, one woman that started to have many children, or one man with multiple wives, either way. But they can all at some point be traced to one paternity. So, and these are so when you talk about nationhood and citizen, a citizen fundamentally has an identity and culture. That identity can either be of ethnic origin
Mm,
or in a slightly more refined arrangement can be a civically defined entity. Where we say, I mean identity rather, where we say, we just, like the French now, they just say egalite. We define ourselves as being freedom lovers. We're just going to fight for freedom anywhere, any day, anytime. So it's now no longer what their ethnic origin dictates, but what the ideal that they've now defined their identity by. So these are fundamental the to the birth of a nation because whether you like it or not, every nation has been formed this way. Japan is formed based on that homogeneity, same um, heritage. Even the Chinese, their ancestor of Chinese, I've forgotten the name. But they trace themselves back to one person who fought a great war, and upon winning that war, became the father of the Chinese nation. So they see themselves as the descendant of that one man that has now become 1.4 billion people.
just like Yoruba found their ancestral lineage to Oduduwa.
Exactly. So when you talk about citizenship, there's always what identify a citizen, which ultimately becomes the identity of the nation. So, and it doesn't matter whether it's civil or ethnic, something has to be the root of that. And that is what then you can then start to extrapolate and say, okay, these are the various traits or characteristics of that either ethnic or civil national or nationalism or nationhood. And that becomes how that nation becomes an entity.
Well, just to re-echo some of the things you have said and that we have been saying since the beginning of this podcast, I just want to re-emphasize the fact that to connect citizenship to the birth of a nation, you're simply talking about uh, the concept of who belongs and who does not belong. And that is the concept of membership. Even though I would have loved to use a better word than that membership, but that
Who
is
is
what
included and
uh,
who is included
included
and who
and
is
not
excluded?
excluded. But for now, that is the best concept that we can come up with. Maybe some other time we may come up with a better concept. But the idea of membership is very, very important.
Maybe so. Can I suggest that you use the word who has belonging?
Yeah,
Because a citizen has a belonging, and a member of a club also has belonging. So
that
because when we say membership, I think just to not confuse it in that, yeah.
a
Well, please go ahead.
member who has a sense of belonging to the history and to all that is connected to that nation. So there is that concept of defining who belongs and who does not belong. There is also a concept of the legitimacy of the nation. You see, a nation does not gain its legitimacy by somebody just saying, this is a nation. No, even though I don't want to use this idea, but I think it comes close to what I'm trying to say here, and that is the idea of the Biafra nation. You know, during the civil war in Nigeria, when the Biafra wanted to go their separate way, they had their own central bank, they printed their own money, they had their own military, their own police, they had everything. They had everything every nation could have. But that does not still confer nationhood on them because for a nation to exist, it has to be legitimized by the citizen.
Must
And
be a
that is
constitutional background to it
so
or business.
it is the citizen that gives legitimacy to a nation. Another thing that is very important, how citizenship connects to nationhood, is that a nation must recognize their historical context. The historical context is very, very important to understanding how that nation emerges. For example, in Nigeria, for many African countries, historical context always emanates from the idea of colonialism. And of course, because of that colonialism, there are people asked to agitate and fight for independence. So for many countries in Africa, the historical context is always a question of gaining independence from the colonial master. Another thing that is very, very critical to citizenship connecting to the birth of nationhood is what we have been saying all along, is when there is right and identity. A nation cannot exist if it doesn't confer rights.
Yeah.
And when a nation refuses to confer rights and privileges to people, that is when you see agitation. That is when you see unrest. That
That's
is
when
when you
that's when
see war.
the social contract is broken.
It's broken. So there has to be rights. The right of the people has to be guaranteed, and there has to be shared identity. There has to be shared identity. And of course, the last point I would love to talk about on how citizenship connects to the birth of nationhood is that sometimes nation often evolve over time.
Yeah.
Nationhood is not static,
No.
and we've seen that throughout history. It's not static. It evolves. It will continue to evolve.
Yeah.
And we must always put that into consideration. And of course, our current history, our current ideology, our current perspective of the world around us is going to shape what we are going to become tomorrow as a nation. And we must always be conscious of that. So when certain people are saying this is how we want our nation to be now, we shouldn't see it as if uh, they don't have a right to say that. We should look at it together. We must all be able to come together to the table and be able to say, this is what we want to represent us as a people. And if there is no collective agreement to that, I think we need to straighten that out before we progress as a nation. Now, so let's talk about, I know we've mentioned some things about that, and that is the social contract and how that connects uh, the responsibility of the government to the obligation of the citizen. So how do we want to talk about the social contracts? How
Okay.
important is a social contract?
Let's try to keep it very, very simple. And
Yeah.
I would just maybe just introduce it and I will let you build it more. Now, let's say you are my landlord
Mm,
and I'm your tenant.
mm,
I come to your house, you say, please, I like a room, please. And you say, okay, I think I've checked your background. You should be okay to live in my house. And we sign the tenancy agreement.
mm,
And you say, in my house, the gate must be locked by 12 midnight. But as long as that is kept, the water, the electricity will be provided. As long as you pay for it. In other words, there is the concept of authority, which you have and I have. And by that I mean, in the case of a nation, the government of a nation
mm,
has a legitimate government,
mm,
has authority,
mm,
and has jurisdiction to function.
mm,
But in the same way, the citizen also has his own personal authority
mm,
and jurisdiction.
mm,
But if there's a contract between the citizen and the government to say, um, I don't have the means to defend myself against the enemies that come to our land.
mm,
Government, please, can you look after that responsibility for me?
mm,
And in turn, I will make sure that I also comply with whatever it takes for you to be able to do that job very well. Such is a contract, it's a social contract between the government and the citizen, where the citizen gives the state the power of attorney. I'm using very legal terms now. The power to, I submit, as it were, part of my authority to the government so that the government can supply to me a function that I may not be able to carry out by my own means or ability. In other words, there is a benefit to be had, but for that benefit to be delivered, there must be some kind of devolution or a giving up of certain right within reasonable means that allows the government to do its function. So sometimes we say, okay, we want good policing in our country, but that means if a police stops you, you have to stop. They say, show me your driver license. You have to produce it. You have to be compliant. You have to, in effect, obey in order to guarantee that your safety is looked after. That is an example of what we call a social contract between a government and a citizen. And the tenant here is that that social contract must be understood and must be backed up by the constitution of the land. And each party must keep their end of that contract. Because once that is violated, what happens is trust between government and citizen breaks down or start to deteriorate. If it continues to deteriorate, then a time comes when the citizen says, I do not recognize this government again.
Don't believe
I,
in this government again.
I don't believe in this government again. You have become illegitimate to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Same is also true for this for the citizen. If the citizen also violate the contract,
yeah.
for example, the citizen goes to violate
By law.
yes, maybe you put the law into your hand and say somebody offends you and say, I'm just going to harm you, and you harm that person in a way that you incapacitate the person. The government has the right to now deny you of your civil liberties and say, we will have to restrict you under law and put you
Out of
in,
the agreement we have
yes,
together.
and we'll put you in a house all by yourself. That house is called a prison. You're going to stay there by
Kind of
yourself.
punishments.
Yes. So meaning, and the reason why that is done is as a deterrent to say you are not upholding the values of our country, which we have enshrined in law. But the reason why the citizen will also agitate and say, government, you are not doing the right thing, is to say that we do not want this kind of governance over this land. So the citizen will say, so they can actually protest, and that right to protest, to express your grievance to the government in a legitimate, non-destructive way, is also protected by law. You can say, you are not keeping your contract, government, you are not keeping your contract, and we are not going to accept it. You have to recourse, you have to revert back to what has been agreed. That those things are called social contract, where the central authority has some obligations that must be fulfilled, and by the same token, the protected entity, the citizen, also have some rights and obligations which also must be protected and must be upheld.
Thank you very much, Kunle. Now, not to take away your definition from you, but I would just like to look at the social contracts more or less like a deal. And when you are making a deal with somebody, you have to come open-handed. You have to come without any ulterior motive. You have to come plain and clear. They have to be able to see through you that everything you are putting on the table represents the best of your intention. That is what social contract social contract is. As the government, who is part of the party who is making the deal, and of course, as individuals who are citizens who are also collectively making the deal with the government, everybody has to come with everything that they have, every desire, every intention, everything that is going to be binding on everybody. We have to come plain and clear. It has to be both implicit and explicit agreement. That shouldn't be anything that should be cast under any shadow. We have to complain. And of course, when we come to that kind of table to decide that this is what is going to be binding on us, and these are going to be the restriction or the limitation of that contract, we are all going to agree. Until we'll agree, we cannot move forward. And that is the point I want to make. This social contract cannot be forced on people. Mm-hmm. We need to understand that. You cannot force it down on people. When you force it down on people, then it is no longer a social contract. A social contract. Because it has to be an agreement. People must not agree under duress. They must not agree under certain unconducive condition. It has to be conditioned that they are willing to agree and to uphold in their life. And I
Let
think
me add,
it's
let me
very
add this. And that's true. And I think the overriding thing is that it must be done in good faith.
good
For
for
example,
them.
assuming that, let's say there's disorder in land,
Yeah.
there's riot, and where there's destruction of property,
Yeah.
but because the government has already agreed with citizens that we will
Protect
protect,
life and property.
so
Yeah.
the government can impose a curfew,
Yeah.
not, not because they just want to
Control the people.
throw the paper and just deny, no, but because of the contract to protect.
Yeah.
They say, in order to do that
All
function,
right to protect.
in order to exercise this obligation, we need to impose a curfew so that things can be brought back to order. So
Mhm.
that's one example. I just wanted to add to that to your the description.
Yeah. So as I was saying, now this social contract is what you and I know is what many countries have developed into what we call constitution today. It is what we have in the constitution. It is what guides our operations, our mode of operation within the system that we have
Yes.
created. Now, for example, I always love to reference Israel when it comes to conceiving how a nation is born. Now, look at Israel, and we can see that clearly how the nation Israel was formed, even up to today. This was something that was done over 4,000 years ago, or even more than that. Or yeah, probably more than 4,000 years ago. But we can see how that contractual agreement with Abraham fully manifested until they, be, they became a recognized nation under the United Nations in 19, was it 1948 or 19, I think it was 1948, that they became a recognized nation. Now, what did God do? God called Abraham. Okay, I'm going to bring you to a land that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to multiply you. I'm going to do this to you, and I'm going to make you a great nation. Then, but before you become a great nation, your children, your descendants are going to be slaves somewhere. Then, after a while, I will bring a liberator who is going to lead them to that nation where I am going to, which I have promised you. Now, when God was bringing them to that nation, before they ever stepped into that nation, do you know the first thing God did? It
Yes,
was to call Moses unto himself,
Lord.
gave him a tablet.
Yeah.
And on that tablet was inscribed the Ten Commandments, which we can say today is the command. Now, many people think that the journey of the Israelites from Egypt to the promised land is a religious experience. It is not.
It's a nation that is traveling.
It's not a
Nation,
religious experience.
national
It's
experience.
a part of a nation. It is God trying to manifest the original intention that God had in mind at creation. It's
Forgive me,
not a
Shegun.
religious, even though we've made religious experience out of it, but it is more of a part of a nation.
100%. This is why, Shegun, I believe the greatest disservice that we do to the book we call Bible is to treat it as a religious book. I think it's the worst thing we have ever done to the Bible
Yeah,
because it makes us lose the value that we should be getting from it when it is, in fact, a legal book, a political book, an economic book, a book of nations,
exactly.
how to run a nation. That's what it is about. But somehow we've stripped it of all of its value and just use it as some religious thing, as a book of emotive expressions.
Now look at all that we have been saying since the beginning of this podcast. Now let's now narrow it down to the Ten Commandments. Is it in any way different from all that we have been saying about how to become a citizen and how a nation is formed?
It's a
When
social.
God wanted to form the nation Israel, he gave them the Ten Commandments. And the Ten Commandments has just two aspects to it. The duty to God, which is the government, and
Reference.
then your duty to your fellow man, which is your responsibility to the
On
community.
civic responsibility. Exactly.
That's exactly what you've been saying.
Yeah.
But we Christians, we've made a religious experience out of this national social contract.
100%.
I just want you to speak a little bit more about it.
This excites me, Shegun. You know exactly how I feel about this. But you see, it is true. It is true. The, the that Ten Commandments, everything that you see in that place
Yeah,
is God highlighting and saying the foundation of a country is law.
it's law. It's law.
In other words, how can two people live together if you do not know how to live together? Let me, and I'm not going to leave it to you.
Exactly.
Let
To
me
decide
define.
what you want.
Exactly, because if I did leave it to you, it's going to be a jungle.
Yeah,
You're going to do it anything you want, and
yeah,
you're going to have this
yeah.
chaos.
Don't do justice.
But we don't want chaos.
Mm,
Let me set the framework
mm.
upon which this
Foundation.
country
Mm.
runs. It
And it's
was set the
law.
foundation of the nation, and the foundation of the nation is law.
Law. Mm.
So never somebody thinks, oh, law is too restricted. No, the point is not restriction.
It's order.
Rather,
It's
it is
order.
order and productivity. How are you going to have order?
Mm,
How are you going to have peace? How are
mm,
you going to have prosperity and productivity? Law.
mm,
And this is what God did and showed us as a framework of a model nation.
mm.
It is not that God loves Israel more than any other country. It
Exactly.
was
Just a model.
let
Yeah.
me show you a model of how a nation should operate, should be formed and operate. That's all he was saying to them. And
Mm,
he said, in fact, he actually explains it in Deuteronomy. He said, when other people see, other nations see this, they
mm,
will now envy you and say, this is how we ought to be.
mm,
You are such a happy nation because of your God and your laws.
mm, mm.
It's very clear.
Yeah.
How we totally took our eyes off that is still
I begin to bring and begin to build worship houses all over the place. It's
honestly, it
and
is
not to say that they are not relevant, but they are just a means to an end, not the end in themselves.
exactly just a means to an end. And if God was so interested in all the buildings, that would have been the first thing we would have said
Yeah,
to be rebuilt.
yeah.
But God did something. He allowed the temple to be a tent that is
And it's
removable.
just one in the entire nation, not
Yes,
many temples everywhere. Just one temple
exactly.
in
But
the
it was
entire
also,
nation.
you're right. But if you look at the very first one, the tabernacle was actually a removable structure,
Yeah,
meaning that,
yeah.
listen,
That can be moved around. Yeah, the tent.
he said, this is not the goal.
Yeah,
This is not the goal.
yeah,
And and even when oh my days, David almost had to coerce God to accept his
yeah.
building.
It's
Even
building.
though even though God told him, I'm not interested. He said, look, are you trying to insult me? I
Yeah,
own the whole heaven. The
yeah.
whole earth is my footstool. So which building are you going to build for me when the whole thing, the whole piece of real estate is my footstool? He said, I don't need this. He said, but I appreciate your kind gesture. Go ahead. I recognize it. But when God did not stop the temple from being destroyed
Exactly. Yeah.
twice,
That is to tell you that it wasn't his priority in the first place.
even when they were trying to show off to Jesus and say, "Oh, Jesus, have you seen this temple? See how just the first thing Jesus said was meant to depress them. He said,
Yeah.
"There's no stone here that will not be thrown down." So that should tell you God's priority. If you lose your sense of priority and put all your effort into building a beautiful tabernacle,
Yeah.
saying to you,
Mm.
we are not that interested. Because what God is interested in is the nation.
Nation. Mm.
The nation. In fact, didn't he say you are a
Royal
royal,
priesthood, a holy
a
nation, a holy
nation?
nation.
Look at this one. If my people
Mm.
who are called by my name
Shall
will
humble
humble
themselves.
themselves, pray, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sin and heal their land.
Yeah,
What do you call our land? It's called our nation.
nation.
The nation, therefore, is more important to God than all of our religious edifices and practices.
Kunle, I think we are coming to something very serious here, and I think I'm almost, having tears on my eye as we talk about this, because this is not a criticism
No,
of the church.
no, no, no.
No doubt, the church or the churches that we have are needed, but the message we are passing across is that they are not the end.
It's
They are
just a
just a means to an
one.
end. God's goal is not for churches to spring up all over the places. Even though when we do that, we are in one way or the other, we are using it to propagate the will of God. But that is not the ultimate goal of God. Of God.
Let me
Ultimate,
throw this.
yeah,
Kevin. He said that his goal is to make of one family
yeah.
all the
One tribe,
nations
one nation. Yeah, yeah,
of the. Please
yeah.
go ahead. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
So, as I was talking about, the goal is not a critique of the church. I belong to the church and I am happy being an Anglican. I am happy because I believe being an Anglican today is where God wants me to be. But that does not mean to say that if God wants me to be in Anglican, then Anglicanism or participating in what Anglican does should now be the yardstick of, or should be the purism of looking at what other people are doing around the world. That shouldn't be the situation. What we are saying is that we must not make the church as a final goal of God's primary agenda. And that is what is going to lead me to our final question as we begin to wrap up in this podcast. So, which means at the beginning, God has a goal in mind. And I think through this podcast, we can actually help our viewers to understand what was God's goal at the beginning of creation.
Yes.
Now, the question is, was it to build a religious nation? Of course, we can see that that is not the case. The purpose of creation from the beginning was to build the kingdom of God. Simple. And
100%.
we're going to dwell more on that in the second part of this podcast. We don't want to rush this podcast. And that's why we are taking our time to lay the foundation. So, Kunle, I just want you to speak to that. Was
No,
God's intention at the beginning to build a religious nation or to build the kingdom of God?
if it was God's intention to build a religion, one of the things Jesus will have done as soon as he arrived was to seek a religious organization to join. But he
Never
absolutely
joined.
avoided
Never joined it. Never joined it.
never did.
And that's something we need to learn from.
Then he was just minding his business,
Mm,
and a student
mm,
came to him
mm,
and said, we have been watching you. There's something you do.
mm,
Teacher,
mm,
teach us to pray.
mm,
And he said, okay, since you want to know, since you asked,
mm.
I'll teach you. So
mm,
when you pray, pray
mm,
like this.
mm,
Our Father,
mm,
you are not in our own jurisdiction. You are
mm,
in a different realm.
mm,
We can say you are in your own country by yourself.
mm,
And your country is not as bad as our own. Somehow our own country is not functioning very well. You are not on air.
mm,
And we respect you for that.
mm.
But I think of all things we can ask you, we're asking for this one thing to start with. Order is very important in the scheme of God. What God says first is actually foundational, and you can only build on that one. If you twist it the other way, the ultimate collapse. Say the first request that must come from your mouth is this: your kingdom come. That is what earth needs. It's not a religion. In fact, it's not all the government that we have been creating. We need the original government that God always had in mind. So he says, your kingdom come. The word kingdom means multiple things, depending on the context. It can mean a nation or a country, it can mean a government,
Culture. Mm,
it can also mean culture,
mm,
depending on the context in which you're using it. So if I say the kingdom of heaven, I am talking about a territory.
mm.
If I say the kingdom of God, I'm talking about a government who that is presided upon by God Himself. So, for example, I can say the kingdom of King Charles. I'm saying that King Charles is the head of government, and in fact, it is in him that government is constituted. But if I say United Kingdom of Great Britain, another island, I'm talking about the territory which you can identify by a map. So when I say the kingdom of heaven, I'm talking about the territory, the realm. If I say the kingdom of God, I'm talking about a government, a governmental entity. And if we talk about the influence of that kingdom, we're talking about its culture. And these things are very important because we must not mix them up. So he said, the thing you must ask for on earth is how God governs his own realm. Your own kingdom, let it come. Isn't it also what he said right from the beginning? We will make man in our image and after our likeness. And the first thing we need to put upon them is government. That is, let them have government or dominion. Okay? When that was spoiled, and he said, I'm going to repair this thing. I'm going to allow a woman to give birth to a child so that this child will be a legitimate human. But I'm going to give somebody, I'm going to put inside that child a son, and I'm going to put something upon that person. When I put something on your shoulder, what do I mean, Shagun? I mean that you are responsible for this. It says, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, meaning he is going to be responsible for the kind of government that the earth needs. So that Psalm 45 says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of your kingdom is the right scepter. That is, your own government is the kind of government that we actually need. So, to put it together, the most important thing to a human being is government. The most important function of government is law. And the end goal of government is peace. That's why it says, and of the increase of his government and his peace, there shall be no end. If a government does not deliver peace to you, or what you call, a good quality of life, you will say, I cannot live in this country. I want to run away. I want to
Escape
agitate.
another country.
I want to migrate. It is because peace is not being granted to you.
Mm,
Peace is the great desire of any citizen, but the greatest need is government because it is the function of government, a good government, that delivers peace
mm,
through righteousness or right, the law, and the upholding of that law, which is called righteousness, and justice. And when justice is done, you have peace. These are fundamental tenets of, in fact, we are laying a very strong framework here. And by the grace of God, we build on this. But these things are so important because God's intent is not religion. but government. And it's not just government that we just continue to experiment, let's say socialism or communism or democracy. No, the kingdom of God is his original idea of
And
government.
we're going to see how that looks like next month by the grace. Now, hopefully, as we finally wrap up, because we've been trying to wrap up ever since, but as we finally draw the last button, I just want to emphasize the fact that you mentioned something that when Jesus Christ came into this world, he didn't join any religious organization. And I'm sure some people may be surprised by that, but if you go and check your Bible, you will find it there. It's so clear. He did not join any religious organization. And another thing about Jesus was that Jesus never sought membership of
No,
people.
no.
He never sought membership. But what is our religious organization doing today? They are busy seeking membership all over the place. Another thing that Jesus did was that rather than seeking for membership, Jesus decided to disciple.
Exactly.
He discipled. So what he started was a school.
It's cool.
That was why he was called a teacher. He was not, even though some people, in fact, I think he was even the one that says, that calls himself prophet. His teacher never saw, his student never saw him as a prophet. They
No, because
saw him as a teacher.
a prophet is like a speaker. It's like a
Yeah,
speaker of the house. You are speaking
yeah,
on behalf of government, but this
yeah,
was the government
yeah.
himself.
This was the government. So they saw him more as a teacher. So he started the school. And that is the reason for so many people who don't understand why we have School of Transformational Leadership. This is where the idea is coming from. We are simply doing exactly what Jesus did. When Jesus came, he didn't start a church. He started a school. And when he was leaving, he didn't ask his disciples to start a church. He said, go and disciple all nations.
And don't invent the syllabus.
Go and disciple the nation.
Yes,
Go and be a teacher to them. That is what he left. That was what he started with. That was what he left with.
100%.
But where did we now get the idea of looking for membership all over the place? I'm not saying they are not good, but just like we have said in this podcast, they are good ideas, but that does not mean they are the best of our ideas. They are
Put
only
it this
a means to an end, not the end in themselves.
I'll put it this way, and
I just want you to say the last word and then
I'll
we.
say the last word. And just on that point you made, that sometimes we prioritize good things over and above the right things. It's exactly what Martha was doing. Martha was busy doing very good things, nice things, except the right thing. And Jesus said, one thing is needful. That's what Mary has chosen. Well, maybe we need to now return back to doing what Mary was doing in the context of Jesus. I'll leave it there.
So, viewers, we want to thank everyone that has waited patiently to listen to our podcast today, which is our podcast number 6, Leadership Blueprint Podcast. And the topic we have been exploring since the beginning for almost 2 hours now is the topic of citizenship and the birth of nationhood. This is just the part 1 of it. You can see that there is so much to say, that all that we have been saying for close to 2 hours is just trying to lay the foundation of what is to come next month, which will be the part 2 of this podcast. We want you to continue to share, like, comment on all our podcasts. Let me also say, beginning from next month, we're going to be having another version of this Leadership Blueprint podcast. We're also going to be introducing guests to our Leadership Blueprint podcast. Sometimes you can see me just having the conversation alone with the guests. Sometimes you can see myself and Kunle doing the job that we know best to do together, together with the guests. But in most cases, my own leadership podcast with Kunle will always hold as we usually hold it. But then there is going to be another version of it, whereby we will be bringing guests, and then we want to explore this leadership blueprint from another aspect, from another angle. We want to see how we can do it even from other ways that is different from the way we have been handling it. And we want to keep hoping that this is really helping somebody to become a better citizen and to become the best version that God has destined them to be. So until we meet you again next month, God bless you and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
God bless you.
Bye-bye. Yeah.